Welcome again to another episode of the Nailsin Ratings. I've recently rewatched all of the DC EU, or is it Worlds of DC now? The DC Cinematic Universe, I mean, that's another problem they're having. We'll just stick with DC EU. So I rewatched all the movies. I went through Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Justice League. So I'm going to discuss each one as its own episode of Nailsin Ratings off and on here when I have the time and what have you. So right off the bat, we'll start with the first one, that being Man of Steel. Now, Man of Steel, I'm fairly certain was not intended to be a tentpole movie for a new expanded universe like Marvel for DC. There had been some rumblings about it. There had been talks about the Green Lantern movie was going to do that, and I don't know how far that went in the thinking of it. It certainly doesn't appear that way in that movie, which didn't do well. But at the time, the Dark Knight trilogy under Nolan was coming to an end, but at the same time, there was very serious work being done on a Justice League movie by George Miller of Mad Max fame. And there was a writer's strike, and it got scrapped right at the last minute before they began filming and what have you. So that was scrapped and wasn't going to happen. But at the same time, Man of Steel was in production, and there was discussion about it not being part of an expanded universe. And I think there was an interview with Zack Snyder in which he explained that. And says, well, they're doing their thing over there, we're doing our thing over here, Chris is doing his thing, and so there would be these standalone projects, which is strange because that's kind of where they sound like they've ended up now, where they keep referring to the different films as standalone. Although, just because of the position they're in with the movies already set to go, like Aquaman coming up, I don't know. I guess the DCEU continues, sort of, but there'll be these other films like the Joker movie and stuff, and I don't know. But anyway, so Man of Steel became that. There wasn't a whole lot in it that said it was an expanded universe, except for two notable things, which was, of course, the logo of Wayne Industries on the satellite between the fight between Superman and General Zod. And then, of course, Carol Ferris. She's the assistant to the general, I forget his name, and there, who some fans had a theory that he might be John Jones, the Martian Manhunter in disguise. But that's nothing official. But Carol Ferris was there, who is, of course, the long-standing love interest of Green Lantern, the Hal Jordan version. And so I don't know if that was just put in there because they needed people from the Air Force, and it's just like an Easter egg. Easter eggs can work as a nod to potential cinematic universe, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could just be something for, oh, look at that, and that's it. So the rest of the movie goes on as Superman Begins, because at the time that the stories were being let out, that we're working on a Superman film after the Dark Knight trilogy, and they Warner Brothers went to Nolan for his ideas on that. He was not interested in directing a trilogy of Superman films, but he would produce one for them. I guess he still is credited as the producer of the successive films. I'm not sure, but he got this ball rolling, and he hired Zack Snyder to be the director, and pretty much it became Zack Snyder's deal. But you can see tone and what have you in the look of the film that it owes a lot to the Dark Knight trilogy. The sort of darkened and saturated colors of the film, which works perfectly for Batman. I'm not so sure that's a good idea for Superman, even though he was, this lost character in the movie. He's not sure what he's supposed to do. He's a freshman superhero in this movie. He hasn't really even become Superman till the end. And so it fit. It's a minor problem with it, but it is, overall, you got to understand the broad differences between tone and a character of Superman and Batman. And it's probably not a good idea to show it looking like the Dark Knight universe. So But anyway, again, very similar in this fact that he's looking for his place in the world, and he's going through this journey, and you see him going through all of that, and that's all fine. It's all pretty good. Overall, I think Man of Steel works. I think it's a fairly good film, but there's some serious flaws in it, and one of the things that was the biggest thing was that he kills Zod in the end. That didn't really bother me as much because it fit within, again, the tone they're setting. Now, as I criticize it for copying Dark Knight in look and the color and, you know, the desaturation and all that, but the idea of having it grounded in a real world idea of, you know, well, what would it be like if people like Superman really existed? And that movie follows it to a T. You see the massive destruction that happens, and it leaves you thinking, well, it's a good thing there isn't a Superman. Because this is the type of stuff you'd have to put up with, and it would be. I mean, logically, you'd have to think about it. You know, he's tossing things around and all that destruction, and he can't really control where the Kryptonian criminals were going to go and all that. And it's one against however many they had, you know. And there was a lot of complaints about that again, that Superman, you know, he was very irresponsible and all this massive destruction, and he didn't try to force the battle somewhere else, kind of like the Christopher Reeve Superman did, and when he was fighting the Kryptonians. But the thing is this, again, is Superman's first day on the job. He just tried on the tights, and so you gotta cut him some slack here. So and that's clear. I mean, the movie is telling you that. So that's the problem, that he's not quite sure what to do, and he has to figure it out and learn the hard way. And so killing Zod, and well, Superman would never kill and all that, but he's forced into this situation. Well, what was he supposed to do? How was he going to stop it? You know, Zod matched him for power, and you know, Zod's pushing him to kill him. Zod's going like suicide by Superman, and there's really not much else for him to do. And so, before, if you push it into the cartoon world where Superman comes from, that yes, he would have found a solution to defeat Zod, even one that probably wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then he smiles and winks at the camera. You know, this was to be rooted in the real world. He used real world elements with this fantastic person entering it, and you see all the differences it would make. In long term, you could understand that superheroes appearing in the world would change it massively, culturally and everything. It would not be within a few years, the world would be unrecognizable, which kind of defeats it, because it's not a world that you could relate to anymore, and it's not going to be the same. The religions would change and all that. And the movies could explore that, but eventually you would reach a point where it becomes a detriment to it. But hey, if you're only going to do 3 movies, which is what I think is what that was the original intent, it wouldn't matter. But again, this was his freshman year, and over time, I think they would have gotten, and I think Snyder has said this, that yeah, he would have gotten better and would have been the Superman that people know and all that sort of thing. But so the real problem in it was the dealing with his father, Jonathan Kent. And the Kryptonian stuff was all interesting. We finally get to see a Krypton that looks really alien and something like out of Star Wars and all that, with the new technology, special effects, and because the original Christopher Reeve movies, they were limited with what they could do, and it was an interesting design choice, and it did look very alien. But here you see creatures and stuff like that, and kind of an adventure for Jor-El to do, and that was all. It was all very good. But Jonathan Kent, and Jonathan Kent's attitude about keeping everything secret and hiding his powers and all that is very much in line all the way back to Action Comics 1, where there's just, it's a short panel, but the father is telling young Clark that you got to keep these powers a secret, because if you don't, people will be afraid of you. And so they expand on that in this whole thing about he's worried about what this will mean for his adopted son, but he's also worried about what it'll mean for the world. And he knows that this is a massive game changer here, and he's frightened about what it could lead to, and he doesn't know. And so he's being very cautious, and he's constantly against Clark using the powers. And all that's good, again, because it's right out of the comic books itself, their first one, and that's all fine. But when you get to the death of Jonathan Kent, where he's killed by the tornado, and he's looking at Clark and telling him, no, don't do anything, I just don't buy it. It's just, I don't know. I know they had to get somewhere to where Jonathan's dead, and some of they didn't want to just have him have a heart attack again like Glenn Ford did in the Christopher Reeve movie, I guess. But I just don't buy that Clark is going to stand there and do nothing and watch, because look, he's Superman. He can see through the clouds of the tornado. He's watching his father get ripped to shreds by the thing, and he has to stand there. He would have been over there rescuing him in a blink of an eye before he even thought about it. And it's just not believable. And to me, that is the biggest flaw in the film and the story. And they had to have tried to think of something else. I don't know, but it just didn't buy that one. So to me, that is far more damaging than the other complaints of the film. It's dark, the destruction's way too much, and it makes Superman look like a failure. And then, of course, killing Zod. I forgive all of that. In fact, I think it works very well for the story. But that scene there, it was a mistake. I needed to think of something else. I don't know what, but not that. Another thing that comes up about the death of Zod is that people are kind of, well, why is he so upset about it? He had to do it, and there he is. He's crying over this evil bastard who threatened the world, killed people, and almost killed his mother, on and on and on. And one of the things is that I thought that it's true that they needed something that showed where Clark himself is scared of his powers, and that maybe in some scene in his childhood he hurt another child, or maybe he had one of the livestock and he fried it with his heat vision or something like that, or a dog and he accidentally killed it, didn't mean to, and then Jonathan Clark, what did I tell you? You gotta, and then again, let me back up. Maybe a scene like that could have given more emphasis on the scene where he doesn't save his father because it's dangerous to do, and I don't think it would be enough to save that scene, but still, I agree with that one, that might be a flaw to the death of Zod, where Superman is so upset about it, and because he just doesn't want to kill. And it's to his credit, of course, but at the same time, it would be nice to have that connect with one of the flashback scenes of his childhood where his powers got out of hand. And there's scenes where he almost does it. The bullies are bullying him, and he doesn't do anything about it. And you see the scene where he crushed the post of the fence and all that. But he didn't do anything. See, you kind of think, well, was there a time when he did do something, and oh boy, you made a mistake there, and that sort of thing. So that would have made it a better narrative in explaining Clark's personality and his reactions to the events of Man of Steel. But all in all, I think it's a good film. It's not great, and again, I just pointed out there's flaws in it, but it didn't achieve the respect and adoration that the movie audience gave to something like Wonder Woman, which stands tall above all the others out of the DCEU, and it just seemed to hit everything just right. It wasn't too much this, it wasn't too much that, and it, you know, it was the Goldilocks got the porridge that was just right. So, but still, I like the movie. I do recommend it. I think it was a good starting point, and I think it would have done better if it had gotten a sequel like a Man of Steel 2 or Man of Tomorrow, which was another nickname for Superman. Hey, could have introduced Lex Luthor and had a Superman versus Lex Luthor in the real world under those situations, and you could have gone into depth with a Lex Luthor who might even have a decent argument about Superman interfering with human development and all that, which you would get a taste of that, but no, you didn't quite get it. And then maybe even an indication of Brainiac coming on the way, which I've been wanting a Superman movie where he fights Brainiac. It's always Luthor and Zod, Luthor and Zod, Luthor and Zod, and it was time for someone else. And I mentioned that on someone else's video somewhere, and a bunch of people jumped on me and said, no, that would be something the Justice League would take on or whatever, but Brainiac is Superman's villain, so, you know, I mean, yeah, I guess you could cross over into a Justice League film where Brainiac's the main villain and what have you, comes back for revenge against Superman or something. I don't know. But anyway, that's not what we got. Instead, he went and fought Batman. Now, of course, there's one little Easter egg in the movie with the Wayne symbol on the satellite. So there you go. That's all you need. Was it the best choice? Well, we'll get into that when I discuss Batman versus Superman. But Man of Steel could have been a great beginning to something and could have grown into more. I thought it should have gotten another Superman movie sequel, and then you develop your other films around that going forward. But that's not how it happened, and we'll talk about that next time. But say, while you're here, why not like and subscribe, and check out in the link description below my mini stores that have loads of goodies for you. Flash Gordon.
As soon as we locate the stuff, we'll radio you to send the miners. Right.
I'm ready, Flash.
Shut up, Dale. There you go, Dale. Rest on me. And no, that's not a gun in my pocket. Get your hands off of him, Dale. I mean, Baron.
Still feel like you want to go on? I missed them by 100 yards. Drop the next one on that mountain with slow and ice to the edge of the ridge.
Maybe we should, I don't know, take cover? Say, friends, check out Nailsin Theater at sellfy.com/Nailsin. Yes, there you'll find my poor man Mystery Science Theater treatment of public domain movies that really deserve the treatment. Yes, you can head over there and check out the links to my trailers to such films on my YouTube channel. Yeah, you can preview them and then head over back to sellfy.com/Nailsin and purchase yourself some Mr. Nailsin treatments of movies. I'll be right there to guide you through it.